Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. So today's draw with me is going to be done in Ibispaint today because I haven't used it in a little while. Last time I used it is actually this Tignati piece that I did for an ASMR video, so I thought it'd be fun to do another illustration in Ibispaint and kind of just revisit it because, like I said, I haven't used it in a while. I'm changing the DPI for my canvas to 300. I'm using a 5x7 canvas. I'm also changing the background to kind of a muted gray before we get started. For the brush, I'm using a colored pencil, which I'll show you guys right here. No settings are changed, not even the opacity. Just click the ad, watch the ad, get the brushes free for 18 hours or whatever, and then we can get started. Yeah. So I'm actually going to quickly show you guys the texture of the brush as well. I'm using kind of like a muted dark purple as my sketching color, and I'll get into that a little bit later so that you guys can know why I don't usually sketch with a neutral gray or a pure black. So here's the texture of the pencil, by the way, just so that you guys know that this pencil does have a texture and that it's not entirely smooth, because I know some people kind of think that whenever I do the coloring portion it does have a texture. It's just my webcam can't pick it up. And the first pose that you guys gonna see me basically sketch out is a pose that I'm going to scrap. So I actually did a few like poses in my sketchbook, and the one I liked the most was similar to this one, but as I sketched it out right now, I didn't really like it. I saw a lot of issues and I thought it didn't look as graceful. Did I say who I'm drawing today, by the way? I don't think I did. We're drawing, oh no, I think I'm gonna butcher her name. Nilou? Please, like, correct me if I'm saying her name incorrectly in the comments, because I searched it up a few times and I feel like there was like two ways you could say it, but I'm gonna say it as Nilou until I can figure it out properly. So apologies if that's gonna be annoying people a little bit. So I kind of hid the first sketch that I did, and I'm working on a second sketch because I'm thinking of using a different pose that I was trying out in my sketchbook, because I wanted something a little bit more graceful, also a little bit more dance related. The other one felt a little bit more like posed for the camera, more deliberate, kind of aggressive in a way. This one I feel like is a little bit more feminine, a little bit more graceful. So yeah, but excuse me while I kind of fiddle with the hands for quite a while. I cut out like a good portion of this, but maybe you'll see it at the end when I show you guys the time lapse of how many versions of hands I drew. It's not too many because it probably looks like I drew the same variation basically of both hands. So right, the brush that I'm using. So I'm using the colored pencil for the entire drawing just to keep things more simple, and it kind of does whatever I need it to do for the most part, other than like the texture and stuff. But for the color, like I said, I like doing a muted purple. You can choose whatever color you want, but if you like doing what I do and using the hue, saturation, value slider to change your sketch lines later, it's best not to use a color like a neutral gray or a black, like a completely neutral color void of any saturation, because you won't be able to change the saturation later unless you want to either alpha lock or clip a new layer to your sketch to change the color. I'm just using like a muted purple because it's more easier for me to adjust on the hue, saturation, value slider to a more warmer color when we get to coloring the figure itself. So I think that's about it in terms of talking about the brush and the color that I'm using. So I don't know what else to talk about until we get to closer to the coloring stage. So the reason why you guys are probably hearing me do a voiceover, so basically I initially planned that I wanted to do a illustration of Nilou. Did I swear I just changed the pronunciation. I do apologize. I wanted to do an illustration of her for like quite a while, and I thought it'd be fun to do an Ibispaint. But I knew that it was going to be a bit of a struggle. I didn't think it was going to take 4 hours, but it did. And I basically split up the session into 3 different sessions throughout the whole day. So usually I don't like recording sounds of like the iPad and stuff in the morning because it's hard for me to get good sounds because there's tends to be cars rolling by, kids screaming outside, I don't know, police cars, phone calls, like all that. So I usually like filming these at night. So I did the first session in the morning, and then I did one in the afternoon, and then the majority of this that you're seeing, actually closer to the coloring stage, is what I did during the night portion. And it's just easier for me to record sound at night, which is what you guys kind of requested in a previous draw with me, that you guys kind of wanted me to also leave in the drawing sound along with the voiceover. So yeah, usually when I record these draw with me's, I either record me talking while I'm actually drawing and then edit that down to like half an hour, or I will do the whole session, not record the background noise, and then do a voiceover after. But this time I'm kind of combining both of them and doing the talking like afterwards, which I'm gonna give you guys a little insight of like what happened, I guess. So right now it's actually 5:47 in the morning. I haven't slept yet because I was trying to edit this video, and I thought I was gonna be done like literally in like 5 minutes, but I guess my editing program decided to crash and I kind of lost all the audio for the voiceover, so I'm doing it again. So that's another, what is that, like 26 minutes of me talking now, which kind of sucks. I kind of want to sleep, but that's okay. My planning for like the last few weeks have been absolutely terrible. I scrapped I think 2 videos this week, which is why I'm doing this video kind of last minute. I think that's about it. Other than that, I've been trying my best to get some stuff up for the store update, hopefully in November, late November, early December-ish, depending on how fast I can work, because I'm just realizing that I'm busy and not busy at the same time, and it just feels weird because I feel like I'm too busy to work on personal stuff, but I've been procrastinating and it feels like I haven't been doing enough stuff. But then when I look back at my stuff that I've been trying to do, I've done more than I realized. So I just need to find a better balance of like my work and then my personal stuff. And then, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's because I haven't been doing a lot of personal stuff that I feel like everything's merging and I can't tell what I'm doing anymore. Hopefully you guys will enjoy today's session though. Like I said, like sometimes it's fun to work in Ibispaint. I feel like there's just a little bit less pressure. Also, apologies if I'm slurring my words. Like I said, it's almost 6 a.m. right now, so I feel kind of really tired, but I kind of want to get this video out for Saturday if I can. Yeah, the drawing session in total took about 4 hours and 17 minutes, I think is the recorded time that I had by the end of the recording session, if that makes sense. So I have about 4.5 hours ish of footage to cut down, which took me a while to edit. I'm trying to think right now because my brain's a little bit scattered on what I already talked about in the previous voiceover. Okay, so for the sketch, once you're done with your sketch, if you're following like what I like to do, once you're done with your sketch, I'd like to duplicate it so I have a second one as like a safety net or a backup, so we can just go ahead and hide that for later. And then the one that we still have visible, I will set that to multiply and then prepare for coloring. So before I actually tackled the coloring for Nilou, I wanted to actually do the background first. And I'm doing the background very, very simple. I'm not doing an environment or anything. I just wanted to focus on color and a little bit of lighting. So I did a navy blue and gradually got a little bit more saturated and lighter as we went to the top right hand corner. I added some splotches. I did a Gaussian blur over it all. and then we'll kind of fix the lighting a little bit afterwards, because I'll use some blend modes to kind of bring up that intensity. But yeah, I decided that I wanted to start coloring her right now, and then I will remember to change these sketch lines to be a little bit more warmer so we can kind of match the skin tone a little bit, which is what I'm doing right now. So basically I am going to hue saturation, and I think it says lightness on there. So basically I'm just going to the HSV slider and changing it so that we kind of get this more reddish brown color for the sketch, so that it's like a little bit more warmer, and it's kind of like prepping me for when I have to change the colors later once I finished all the rough colors. And when I mean by rough colors, I do the majority of like the lighting, the shading, the base colors all on this layer first, and then after I merge the sketch and stuff is what I consider like the rendering and cleaning up phase. But I always call this the rough colors, even though it's like, it's not too rough. I try to keep things a little bit more on the clean side anyways, and kind of make it easier for myself to do the cleanup and rendering part, so that I'm not struggling to fix everything in the last stretch. So for the lighting, because I've already have the background kind of established that the upper right hand corner is kind of the lighter area, I am going to make that kind of my very simple light source. So I'm kind of changing the shading on her face so that we have her left side of the face kind of more in shadow, and then the right side kind of more exposed to the light. Yeah, I think, yeah, there's nothing too much to talk about. So another thing I really like having the background kind of like pre-established, because I have some people asking, and I had one comment more recently asking why do I establish the background color prior to coloring the figure, and it's usually because your background color tends to be like the environment or showcases your lighting situation or atmosphere of your setting, I guess, for your illustration for your character. And because of that, usually that will affect your character's colors rather than your colors of your characters affecting the background, if that makes sense. If there's like other objects near your character, they will bounce color and light off of each other, but the background most likely affects the character. So I like to have the background colors just thrown out there so that I know, let's say for like Nilou's blues that's in her outfits, they will read a little bit more bluish green on this background, and I kind of want to keep that separated. But on a very warm background, like I would get a larger range of blues that might read a lot more cooler because it's placed on a red background other than a like an actual blue background. So like it will affect it. And if you guys are interested in what I'm talking about, if you look up something called local color, you'll understand what it means to like how, I think the example people use is like an apple is deemed red and the local color is kind of like the dumbed down version of what you see objects as. So if you see an apple, you're like, that's red, but like under certain lighting conditions, or like if it's near certain objects and stuff that maybe has the colors bouncing off of it, it will read a little bit differently. So like the shadow of the apple could be a little bit more blue, or like the reflections on the apples read as yellow because maybe I have a yellow light beaming on top of the apple or whatever. So like all those lighting, the environment, any of those things will take into consideration of changing your perception of the color. Maybe if I remember, because I think I bookmarked it, there's like this post on Twitter that an artist basically showed their color palette, or not their color palette, like a bunch of different colors that they said is what they use for white in their illustration, and the colors are very obviously not like pure white. A lot of them look like, you know, pale greens, pale oranges, pale browns and stuff, but in their illustrations that they have, because of their color palette in their environment, all those colors read as white in their illustrations. And I think it's really interesting. So if you're not too familiar with like color theory, I think it's a good idea to take a look at that, because like different environments are going to affect the way your eyes are going to read certain colors. Because if you have a very overly, I don't know how to explain it, kind of like an orangey color palette, if that makes sense. If you use a stark white, it's gonna look very punchy, very bold, very like it's very high contrast, right? But if you use a very muted pale yellow and then have some other cooler colors complementing with your oranges, that pale yellow is gonna read very white in that whole color palette, if that makes sense. So it's good to experiment with colors and realize that, you know, reds next to certain blues will read differently versus reds that are next to oranges or next to greens, right? Because your red and your green is going to have such a high contrast that maybe your red looks more red because it's next to green versus like a red that's next to purples. It's going to look a little bit different. Or like a good example is that I believe if you take like a neutral gray, so this is like just a really neutral gray, and you place it on a, I think it's like a weird, how do I explain this, like a red canvas versus like a green canvas. I think if you place it, or no, a red canvas and a blue canvas, I think is what it is. I think if you place the circle, like the gray circle on the red canvas, it almost reads like more of a cooler gray. But if you place the gray circle onto the blue canvas, I believe it reads more like a warmer gray. So like your eyes are playing tricks on you, I guess, by making things read a certain way, but they're technically both the same grays. It's just because the surrounding color makes your eyes read it differently, it does affect the colors, if that makes sense. Just look up color theory. I didn't learn color theory like formally, so like I have tidbits of knowledge about color, but a lot of it also comes from just like application. So like digital painting really pushed me to look at color a lot more. There's a lot of things I could probably adjust and obviously fix and learn about color theory, because like I said, I didn't learn it properly, so there's a lot of things I'm probably missing. But digital painting definitely helped with learning a lot about mixing colors, what colors read differently in terms of like, you know, cooler colors, warmer colors, all that jazz, more contrast, higher contrast, fixing values. Another good way is like painting white fabric is a fun way to do color theory a little bit. If you really want to push your cools and your warm colors for your shadows and your highlights and stuff, I think that's always fun. Like painting white objects. Because I think that was an exercise we did a lot in uni. So like we would paint styrofoam cups and eggs with just black and white paint, and then we got to doing like white fabric on a white wall, and that is the realization that I knew that I didn't understand color theory at all during my uni days, and that was in like my second year of uni. But something clicked a little bit later, and I understood the idea of like color mixing, as well as like how our eyes kind of play these tricks and colors read a little bit differently here and there. So it's like a lot of it's like gonna be fiddling around, but also it's like good to understand what you're seeing. So reading up on color theory would be good as well. Trying to think of what else to talk about. So for the coloring, for the most part, everything is pretty straightforward for process wise. I try to make sure to add a little extra highlights on the right side because it's exposed to the light a little bit more. I tried to pull a little bit of the blue from the background into the hair, and I used a little bit into the skin so that we kind of have that consistency and that make it look a little bit more cohesive in that sense. Because if I can use pre-existing colors on my canvas that I already have, the better. So sometimes when I'm mixing purples, even from the gold, I believe it was like I chose a warmer brown color and colored it, and then after that I kind of knocked it back and made it more cool by adding the blue color, and I kind of got this purple color that I'm using for the shadow of the gold, which I think looks a lot nicer. And I think because it comes from a pre-existing color on the canvas, it kind of doesn't stray too far away from the color palette that I already have set out. I really do apologize if you guys are hearing this like in the morning in your time zone or whenever you're hearing it, and I sound like literally if I'm just super tired. I do apologize about that. Hopefully it won't come across that way too much. I know some of you guys like the more calmer voiceovers, so hopefully you don't mind. yeah, and hopefully you guys don't mind the pencil sounds. Do let me know if you guys prefer it, or if maybe the pencil sounds are a little bit too loud in comparison either for my voiceover or the music. Just let me know and I can adjust it for future videos if I plan to do something similar. So yeah, I kind of made her eyes look a little bit too dark, but luckily it was because I had kind of a brown sketch for the color, and then I added kind of more blues on top, so it kind of made it really dark and a little bit more muddy. So after I was pretty much finished the coloring stage here, kind of doing the rough colors and stuff, I'm cleaning up the sketch, but I also locked the sketch prior and kind of changed the color to match the surrounding areas to make things look a little bit more warmer, as well as just softer in general. And then after that I will un-alpha lock it, and then I will erase any miscellaneous lines before we actually start to merge our layers. So at this point it is now merged and I have the colors for her, but I'm noticing that I didn't take in consideration of some of the shadows on the left side, so I'm going ahead and making a new layer, setting that to multiply, placing down kind of a very light kind of more cool purple, doing some extra shadows, especially on the hair, so that we make it look like the fabric's laying on top of the hair. And then I merged that layer down to the main layer. Then I made a new layer and then layer clipped that one, set it to add or addition, and then I'm doing some extra lighting so that we can kind of have a light source kind of beaming in, because I just placed the other shadows, so I'm kind of having that back and forth of the shadows and the highlights. Then after that I merged that layer onto the main layer again, and now we can actually get started with the actual rendering and cleaning up of Nilou. So for this stage I'm pretty much just focusing on making things look a little bit more sharper, a little bit more clear, as well as like getting rid of any miscellaneous lines, also correcting things if I need to. So like for her eyes, like I said, they appeared a little bit too dark, and after I changed the sketch color to be lighter, it did look better, but I still thought it looked a little bit too dark. I really like how bright and really kind of like cute and very, I don't know, just light her eyes are, because I think it looks just really nice, like the contrast of kind of like teal and turquoise with red. I think it just looks really pretty. I talked about this before, but it's like one of my favorite like color combinations, like teal or mint with peach, or with red or orange. Looks really great in my opinion. Also really love like navy with red, navy with orange looks great. Kind of greens and peach colors, or like peach tones, what am I saying? Pink tones, I mean. Looks great as well. So yeah, I kind of wanted her eyes to pop from her face as well as from the hair, because her hair kind of frames her entire face anyways, so I wanted them to pop. I added a little bit of a purple into her eyes as well. I usually add like a separate lighter color that's not the same as the overall eye color, so I usually place it on the opposite end of where the highlight is, and I like to do that because I like to make the eyes look a little bit more glossy if I can, and it kind of brightens up the eyes just a little bit. And for the hair, I tried my best to do a mixture of like purples and blues. So a lot of the purples and blues are either from me just picking a purple, trying to knock back that vibrant red, or I chose blues from the background, overlaid it on top of the red, picked up the new color, which happens to be a purple, and used that as the shadow color. So that's like how I like to incorporate some of that background color into the figure. And I do that for the hair, I do it for the clothes, and I do it for the skin as well. So that's like one way you can do that. Another way is like adding effects afterwards. So I don't know if I mentioned in this voiceover or the previous one, some people who do not take in consideration of like the background, or do the background after they painted the figure, you can still mess around with the colors by adding overlays, multiply, addition layers, screen layers on top to adjust the colors to fit the environment. So yeah, you don't have to worry about it too much if you don't need to. You can always adjust things after, but I just like having things like pre-established prior, so that I don't forget, or I don't have to do like major changes. So I just like to make sure to keep the background in the back of my mind when I'm coloring, if that makes sense. There's like something else I wanted to talk about and I forgot already. Let me think. I'm pretty sure it has something to do with the coloring process. Or maybe it doesn't. I don't know. Yeah, for the brush though, I am using still the same colored pencil brush for the entire piece. Like I said, I didn't really want to like switch back and forth between like finding new brushes and stuff to do the what am I saying, to do the drawing, because pretty much I just like using a brush that is able to lay down color in a way that doesn't blend while I'm adding new colors, but also I can play with the opacity a little bit. So, you know, the more harder I press, the darker the color will be, or I can put down like full opacity of the color, but the lighter I take my pencil off, or like the lighter touch that I have, it'll kind of lay more of like a transparent version of that color. And I use that to my advantage whenever I do digital painting, because if I can layer up colors transparent, like in a transparent manner, I can pick up new colors from that by using the eyedropper. Can't even tell. I feel like I'm being very delirious right now. Really bummed out that the other voiceover that I did was cut short because my stupid editing program decided to crash. But for the most part, I had a lot of fun drawing her. I definitely don't think I was in the right headspace or mood or even energy level to draw her, so maybe I'll reattempt her again in the future. I think I say that for a lot of my drawings recently, that I want to redraw them, because I don't think I'm quite satisfied how I depicted the characters, if that makes sense. Who else did I draw recently, actually, now that I'm thinking about it? Maybe it's the one of Kaya that I don't like either. Who else is there? I do want to draw Candace and Layla soon, and Nahida, obviously. Hopefully you guys' polls go well. Hopefully I'll remember to put a message or something, giving you guys a little bit good luck with your polls if you haven't polled yet. I did try pulling for Nilou because I kind of want her, but I wasn't aiming for her, if that makes sense. I wouldn't mind if I got her, but the person that I really want is Nahida, so I didn't mind building pity, because if I did get Nilou, I wouldn't mind. I really like her. She's really pretty and she's fun to play. Yeah, I think it'll be. I love Hydro characters. That's another thing. But I really want Nahida, so I'm probably gonna wait now and see if I can get Nahida, because I built my pity up to like, I don't know what I'm at, 54 now, because I got Sino last time, so I started from 0. I was able to do like 5-10 shots, which was nice. So for the most part, just a lot of cleaning up, kind of darkening lines, fixing things, and a lot of actually, when I was doing the coloring stage, there was a point, and I think this is one of the points where I decided to push through, but there's a lot of times where I just wanted to stop the drawing and be like, I'm done, like I don't want to work on it anymore. But I'm glad I kind of fixed up a lot of the areas. Like right here, I would have just left as very rough and very confusingly not connected to anything, if that makes sense. Like a lot of the objects before I added the lines and stuff look like they're just roughly done. There's some lines that were not connected. I also didn't finish the little crown thing that she has above her head. So there's a lot of like unfinished areas, even though I was like prepared to be finished with the drawing. There's just sometimes you can't stop, which is also a problem, but I was gonna stop prematurely probably, so good thing I took some time to actually spruce those things up, because if I do want to post it, I don't want to post it and be like in a day or two find out all these areas I didn't fix up, even though I knew I could. Last things that I wanted to add a little bit of water surrounding her, so I added some water droplets, a little bit of water coming in front, and then I'm gonna copy and paste this larger shape and put it right into the foreground, and then I'm gonna do another flipped version to put it on the right side. And then I think for all of them, I'm either gonna Gaussian blur it or motion blur them so that they're not too in focus. And then I think that's it. Oh no, and then we'll get into one last thing after, because I like doing this at the very end just in case, and I like making my illustrations a little bit more vibrant if I can. Why am I doing this at 6 a.m? I'm so tired right now. But yeah, here's me adjusting the water droplets, kind of flipping that one over, and then kind of just adjusting it so it doesn't look too similar to the ones floating on the left. And I will Gaussian blur these so they're not in focus. I believe the ones that are closer to her, I will just motion blur a little bit so that they look like they're moving. And I think that's it for effects with the water. The last thing I'm gonna do is, after I merge all these, is that I'm adding a overlay layer. You can see I'm adding kind of like splotches of color. So I'm adding blues, I'm adding purples, muted greens. I'm gonna add a bit of like orangey browns in the top right hand corner. And I will just lightly do this. I would set this to overlay, and then you can see how bright it is. It looks really pretty like this, but I do think it looks a little bit too intense. So I'm gonna shuffle her over. I'm going to change the opacity so it's not full intensity, and then I'm going to show you guys what it looks like before and after. It just makes it a little bit more vibrant, and I think it looks a little bit prettier this way. So yeah, that's the last thing I do for the drawing. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's drawing. I'm so sorry if I sound delirious right now, but yeah, 4 hours and 17 minutes, and that's the finished drawing for Nilou. I do apologize if I also said her name wrong the entire time in this video. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed today's drawing session, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!